Okay, so we are continuing 4.1. This will be part 2, starting with example 3. Solve x squared minus 4x equals 45 by factoring. So we have x squared minus 4x equals 45. We have to get everything on one side. So we are going to subtract 45 from both sides. On the right, that's going to cancel, and we have x squared minus 4x minus 45 equals 0. Then we can go ahead and go about our factoring. Now, hopefully you remember from Algebra 1, your product and sum. I usually call them multiply and add, but it's the same thing. Multiplying is you get a product, the sum is from adding. So we have our A times C and then our B. Just to let you know where all of that comes from. So here is your product, here is your sum. Now remember that all comes from your standard form of ax squared plus bx plus c. That's where all the letters come from, the a, the b, and the c. So our a here is just 1, so we really don't have to worry about that. So then we have a negative 45 here, and we have a negative 4 here. And I guess that little line right there should probably be moved. Let's fix that real quick. So we have negative 45 and negative 4. So we want numbers that are going to give us a product of negative 45 and a sum of 4. So first of all, you need to go through all of your multiplication facts. That way you don't miss anything. So if I start with 1, well, I need negative 45, so 1 times negative 45. Well, that means I'm going to have over here 1 plus negative 45 or 1 minus 45. That's not going to give me the negative 4 that I need. 2 does not go into 45. 3 into 45. So 3 times negative 15 will give you your negative 45. But if you over here you have 3 minus 15, that still is not negative 4. So 4 does not go into 45. 5 does. So I have 5 times negative 9. Well, 5 minus 9 does in fact give me negative 4. So these are the numbers that I'm using. Those are the factors that I will be using here. So over here, I have x. The 5 is positive, so I'm going to say plus 5. The 9 is negative, so we'll say x minus 9, and that's equal to 0. So x plus 5 times x minus 9. Anytime you factor, remember you're going to set it up just like this. Now, to solve this, because we're solving by factoring, so usually when you factor, you're done there, but when we solve, we have to take another step. And so now we have x plus 5 equals 0 and x minus 9 equals 0. You are going to split each of those into their own equations. Do not stack them. I know some of you have gotten used to stacking stuff for some reason. Do not do that. Put x plus 5 on the left, x minus 9 on the right, or one on the left, the other on the right. It doesn't matter which. Now go ahead and solve. So you're going to subtract 5 from both sides here to cancel these 5s, and x is equal to negative 5. Then you're going to add 9 to both sides here, and you have x is equal to positive 9. And those are your two answers. So we'll put a little and sign in the middle. And there we go. All right, let's look at another one. Here we have x squared plus 12x plus 35. So let's go ahead and get our table going here. We want to have a product of 35 and a sum of 12. So Make sure again that you fill in your whole table. You'll have 1 times 35. We'll check the sum. 1 plus 35 is not 12. 2 does not go into 35. 3 does not. 4 does not. 5 does go into 35. 5 times 7. Well, let's see. 5 plus 7 equals 12. So there's your factors of 5 and 7. So go back over here. Use this. X plus 5 times x plus 7 equals 0. Now, make sure you split those off into their own equations. X plus 5 equals 0, and x plus 7 equals 0. So here you can subtract 5 from both sides, and x is equal to negative 5. And then subtract 7 from both sides, and you get x is equal to negative 7. So there's your two answers, x equals negative 5 and x equals negative 7. Okay. Look at another one here. Here we have 3x squared minus 5x equals 2. So this 2 is on the wrong side. So first of all, we're going to have to subtract 2 from both sides of the equation. Cancel on the right. And we get 3x squared minus 5x minus 2 equals 0. Now go ahead and do your product and sum table. So I want to get a product. Remember before I told you it was going to be A times C? Well, now we have an A value here that is larger than 1. So we have 3 times negative 2, which I'm going to write over to the side here is actually going to be negative 6. And then our sum is negative 5. So I need numbers that are going to multiply to give me negative 6 and add to give me negative 5. So let's look here. Start again with 1. 1 times negative 6. Well, 1 plus negative would be the same thing as 1 minus 6. And there it is. 1 minus 6 is in fact negative 5. So that's going to be our factors. But we're going to have to work this one just a little bit different because of that number in front. Again, I know that you saw this in Algebra 1. This should just be a refresher for you. So go ahead and write your factors like we did before. X plus 1 times x minus 6 equals 0. Here's where the difference comes in. We have a 3 in front right here. Well, if I just put x plus 1 times x minus 6, that is not going to come out and give me, if I were to multiply that, it's not going to give me this function. So since I have the 3 as my a value, when I write these factors, I have to divide by 3. Reason being, I multiplied by 3 over here in my table. So now I have to go back and undo that and divide by 3. Well, right here, if I look, x plus 1/3, 1/3 does not simplify. So now I need to take this 1/3, or this 3, and move it up here in front. So now I'm going to have 3x plus 1. Well, on the second one, 6 divided by 3, that simplifies. Now that gives me x minus 2 equals 0. So now you're good to go. You have your two factors, and one of them has the 3 in the front to take care of this. So just make sure if there's any number in the front, you go ahead and divide by that number on your factors. Simplify. If it does not simplify, like this 1/3, move it over to the front. All right, so let's move forward. You have your two factors, split them apart. 3x plus 1 equals 0, and then x minus 2 equals 0. Here we are going to subtract 1 from both sides, and we get 3x equals negative 1. One more step here because of the 3, so divide by 3 on both sides. And x equals negative 1/3. All right, over here, one step, add 2 to both sides, and x equals 2. So I'm going to write it down here with the other answer. I have x equals negative 1/3 and x equals 2. And there we are with that. So now let's look at example 4. Example 4 is written a little differently. It says find the zeros of f of x equals 2x squared minus 11x plus 12. Now listen, it does not matter what method you use if it says find the zeros. You can use your graph. You can solve by using square roots, or you can factor. Typically, your graph is going to be the easiest way. I am going to work this problem with factoring just so we can have a little bit more practice on the factoring and get back in the groove with that. So you can work example 4 however you would like. Whichever method you would like, you can use there. But we are going to use factoring. So here we have A times C again for our product. So A is 2, C is 12. Well, 2 times 12 is 24. You notice this time I wrote all of that before I drew my table, so I'd have room for it. And the sum is negative 11 from right there. All right, so numbers that are going to multiply together to give me 24 and add together to give me negative 11. Anytime you have some like this, where you're multiplying to get a positive and adding to get a negative, both of your factors must be negative. So now I'm going to have negative 1 times negative 24. Well, that multiplies to give me positive 24. And then I can take negative 1 plus negative 24, which really is minus 24. But that doesn't give me negative 11, so that factor does not work. 2 goes into 24, so let's try negative 2 times negative 12. Well, that would be negative 2 minus 12. Again, that's not 11. 3 goes into 24, so let's try negative 3 times negative 8. And that means over here we would have negative 3 minus 8. Well, let's see, 8, 9, 10, 11. There we are. Negative 3 minus 8 is negative 11. So those are the factors that we are going to use. I'm going to draw a little squiggly line here just to separate. So if I'm going to change this f of x right here to a 0 so that I can factor. So 0 equals 2x squared minus 11x plus 12. In fact, we're going to go ahead and take this and move it over to the other side. We're going to flip-flop here. So 2x squared minus 11x plus 12 equals 0. If certain teachers will have you flip-flop that, certain teachers don't care. It really doesn't make a huge difference. It's just a little bit easier to deal with. And we're all about trying to make things easier here. So our two factors we're going to use are negative 3 and negative 8. So we have now x minus 3 and x minus 8 is equal to 0. Don't forget you have this 2 right here that we multiplied in our table to get our factors. So now we have to go back and divide by that same 2. Well, if I have 3 over 2, that does not simplify. So now I have 2x minus 3 because this 2 right here, remember, had to go up in front of the x. Now I have x minus 8 over 2. Well, 8 over 2 simplifies to x minus 4 equals 0. And then we can solve each of those. So 2x minus 3 equals 0. And then x minus 4 equals 0. We can go ahead and add 3 to both sides. Cancel here. And 2x is equal to 3. Divide by 2. And our answer there is x equals 3 over 2. On the right side, Add 4 to both sides, and x equals 4. So we're going to go ahead and write that answer down here with the other. We have x equals 3 over 2 and x equals 4. And there we go. There's part 2 of 4.1.